Kings had armies, castles, and crowns, but bankers, they had something way more powerful: money. Let's explore the epic battle between royal bloodlines and clever merchants who figured out that gold beats divine right every time. Let me introduce you to the Medici, the OG banking family who turned Florence into their personal playground. These guys started as simple wool merchants, but they had a genius idea. Instead of just counting other people's money, why not make money from money itself? They basically invented modern banking, charging interest on loans while keeping everything looking squeaky clean for the church. Smart move, right? The Medici got so rich they started buying up half of Florence, sponsoring artists like Michelangelo, and even putting their family members on the papal throne. Talk about a career upgrade, from counting coins to controlling the Vatican. They weren't just bankers anymore. They became the puppet masters of Europe, pulling strings from behind their counting tables. Let's rewind a bit to meet another group that made kings nervous: the Knights Templar. These warrior monks had a brilliant side hustle going. While everyone else was lugging heavy bags of gold across dangerous roads, the Templars created what was basically a medieval debit card system. Here's how it worked. You'd deposit your gold at one Templar house and get a coded letter. Then you could withdraw the same amount at any other Templar location. No more worrying about thieves. This system made them filthy rich and super powerful. Kings started borrowing huge amounts from them to fund their wars. But when France's King Philip IV ended up seriously in debt to the Templars, he decided to solve his problem the royal way, by arresting them all and taking their gold. Talk about an extreme way to dodge your bank fees. Okay, let's talk about royal debt collectors' worst nightmares. When kings ran out of cash, they got super creative, and by creative, I mean completely wild. Take King Henry VIII. This guy loved living large so much he started melting down monasteries when his gold ran out. He literally turned churches into coins. Then there's King Charles I of Spain, who borrowed so much money he went bankrupt 4 times. That's like maxing out your credit card, getting a new one, and maxing that out too. Times 4. My personal favorite is King Philip II of Spain, who tried to solve his money problems by declaring bankruptcy, while sitting on literal mountains of silver from the Americas. These kings were basically that friend who's always broke but somehow still shows up in designer clothes. Here's where the Rothschilds pulled off one of history's most genius moves. While everyone else waited weeks for news to travel across Europe, the Rothschilds had a secret weapon, an army of super-fast messenger pigeons. These birds carried market info and battle updates way faster than any horse could run. During the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, Nathan Rothschild's pigeons brought him news of Napoleon's defeat a full 24 hours before anyone else knew. While other bankers were clueless, Nathan bought up dirt-cheap British stocks. When the news finally broke, those stocks skyrocketed and boom, the Rothschilds made a fortune that would make Jeff Bezos blush. Those little birds didn't just carry messages, they carried the power to reshape Europe's entire financial landscape. Money can't buy love, but in medieval Europe, it could definitely buy you a royal wedding. Rich merchant families figured out the ultimate status upgrade, turning their gold into blue blood. The Medici were absolute pros at this game. They married their kids into every royal family they could find, turning their banking empire into an actual empire. Catherine de' Medici even became Queen of France. But here's the funny part. These nobles were usually broke. They had fancy titles and massive castles but couldn't afford to fix the roof. Meanwhile, merchant families had mountains of cash but couldn't get invited to the cool noble parties. So they struck a deal. Merchants got the status they craved and nobles got to keep their expensive lifestyle. It was like medieval Match.com but with crowns and bank accounts instead of profile pictures. Let me tell you about a company so powerful it makes modern corporations look like lemonade stands. The Dutch East India Company wasn't just big, it was the first mega corporation in history. These guys had their own private army of 10,000 soldiers, a fleet of ships that would make any navy jealous, and the right to wage war, sign treaties, and even mint their own money. Imagine Amazon with battleships. That's basically what we're talking about here. They got so rich trading spices that their stock market value would be worth $7.9 trillion today. That's like Apple, Microsoft, and Google combined, times 3. While kings were stuck managing tiny kingdoms, these Dutch merchants were building a trade empire that stretched from South Africa to Japan. They weren't just challenging royal power, they were showing that a bunch of business people could run half the world. The Bank of England pulled off something incredible in 1694. They basically put the crown on a financial leash. King William III was desperate for cash to fund his wars, and a group of clever merchants saw their chance. They said, "Hey, we'll lend you money, but here's the catch. We get to create a new bank that controls all government spending." The king, probably thinking more about his next battle than the fine print, agreed. Suddenly, these merchants weren't just counting the king's money. They were controlling it. They created a whole new system where the government had to play by their rules. It was like giving your parents' credit card to the bank and making them ask permission before buying anything. The crown kept its shine, but the real power, that moved to the banking halls of London. Let's peek behind the castle walls, where the real power players weren't wearing crowns. They were carrying account books. Medieval moneylenders were like the personal credit cards of kings, except these cards came with some serious attitude. Jewish merchants especially dominated this scene because, unlike Christians, they could charge interest without facing religious backlash. Kings loved to hate them, borrowing massive amounts Monday morning, then conveniently forgetting these loans by Friday night. But here's the twist. When rulers tried pushing these financial wizards around, entire kingdoms could suddenly find their credit mysteriously frozen. These money masters played the ultimate game of medieval leverage. Sure, a king could threaten them, but good luck funding your next war without their gold. Let me show you how some seriously savvy merchants flipped the power game in medieval cities. These traders got tired of kings bossing them around, so they created their own mini-kingdoms called free cities. Venice, Hamburg, Lübeck. These weren't just dots on a map, they were merchant paradise. They wrote their own laws, printed their own money, and told kings to take a hike. The coolest part? These cities were run like businesses. Instead of some guy wearing a crown because his dad had one, they picked leaders who actually knew how to balance a budget. In Venice, the merchants turned their city into such a powerhouse that kings had to ask them for permission to trade. Imagine telling a king to wait in line. That's exactly what these business-savvy rebels did. Let's fast forward to today, where royal families still play an awkward dance with modern banking. The British royals? They're worth billions, but most of their wealth sits in banks they don't control. Charles can't just walk into the Bank of England and demand the crown jewels. Modern monarchs are more like ultra-fancy brand ambassadors who need approval for their allowance. Remember when Dubai's royal family nearly went bust in 2009? Banks swooped in to save them, but with strings attached. Even today's kings and queens have to play nice with the suits in the financial district. The power dynamic that started with the Medicis is still going strong. The crown might sparkle, but the banks hold the vault keys. That's our wild ride through the epic showdown between royal crowns and banking accounts. If you enjoyed this financial time travel, smash that like button and subscribe for more historical plot twists. Share this video, your history-loving friends will thank you.